I continue to comment on the preface of Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, and in case you stumble upon this video, I know myself to be what Hegel calls reason, and that's why I understand Hegel so well, but that's another story. So the idea of the whole, the concept of the totality has been brought into totality, not into totality, into reality, and this is what I call cultural Hegelianism. It's the concept of the whole of being thinking itself, and the main idea is that absolute spirit is made manifest to itself in modern pop culture, Evola's mystical teachings and religion at large, and Hegel's philosophy, which includes the post-Hegelian philosophers and a return into Hegel. And that's this movement which is full Hegelianism. And these free spheres enable us to conceptualize and to grasp the whole of being in all its aspects, and that every singular consciousness is a moment in the self-unfolding of the absolute. And the famous persons, influential artists, politicians, journalists, intellectuals, scientists, are figures of consciousness, and I must recognize my own reason in the world, because we are identical, and I must decipher the cryptid world which confronts me and equalize myself with the world by a cognitive act, and that's difficult. But so yeah, I could say that cultural Hegelianism, as I see it, is the concept of the whole. It is a self-moving system of thought whose purpose is to integrate within itself the whole of reality, all the layers of being, and to give to being its own absolute self-consciousness. And he says that this idea of the whole is the crown of the world of spirit. I said in another video that we are an eternal being, and we are a living Reich of spirits, a living empire of spirits. And there are spirits I would rather not have in this empire, but they are here and I must accept them nonetheless. But my purpose is to bring to mankind the consciousness of its own spiritual essence. I know it sounds kind of grandiloquent and kind of overwhelming and over the top and megalomaniac, but this is what we are. We are an infinite. When I say we, it's because the duality between mind, the mind of all men, has not yet been overcome, and there remains separation. But the whole of being is a spiritual kingdom, and yeah. So Hegel says that once the consciousness of the whole has been brought to light, all the moments which have led to the whole, to the idea of the totality, must be reshaped and reinterpreted as to fit the new image. And I give an illustration. In my personal intellectual and spiritual development, I was a Darwinist, a cosmological evolutionist, like many people. I did not believe in God, I was an atheist. But now that I have a different view of God, I understand that Darwinism and the idea that the Big Bang occurred, whatever, 13 billion years ago, it must be reinterpreted to fit the idea of the world being the image projected by the mind of God. So reason and rationality must be sought and found in Darwinism and in cosmological evolution, but as some sort of a delirium, because the truth is that it is consciousness which gives birth to the world, and not the opposite. But that's quite complex. So yeah, the whole of knowledge must be reordered, reshaped, restructured, and that's why I'm modestly attempting to do with showing, for instance, in my videos, the logical movement at work in the process of what I call the phenomenology of the European mind is that the development of Europeans, because they are confronted by the negation of themselves, force them to evolve intellectually and spiritually, and there's an inherent logical rhythm, a dialectical rhythm, which shapes and structures the evolution of the consciousness of Europeans. Then he talks about the esoteric knowledge that a select few possess about the nature of God and the scientific, not strictly scientific, but they possess a view of the absolute. And I remember in 2019, I stumbled upon a channel to which I'm still subscribed. It's David Thomas. It's an Afro-American who got a near-death experience, and he became completely enlightened. And he said in his videos, "I am your mirror." And I was starting to wonder if the world was my mirror, and I wondered, but how could he know? How could he say to not to me directly? He published videos to a random audience. How could he say, "You are God, I am your mirror"? I started to wonder, and this individual is enlightened by a strange reason that I don't understand, but true enlightenment is to accept that the world is my mirror, and to find my own reflection in the world, which is very difficult because I have to accept that the negative aspects and the ugly parts of existence as being reflection of my own inner essence as a transcendental and also empirical individual, and that's the most difficult task. But yeah, Hegel says that der Verstand, which to simplify is the mind of the transcendental ego in the Kritik der reinen Vernunft, the critic of pure reason by Kant, der Verstand is always dualistic, and in order to grasp the truth, one must overcome this dualistic mind. Der Verstand is the mind which says A equals A cannot be A and not A. Identity is identity, difference is difference, and they are not the same. Whereas speculative logic proves by logical speculation that one cannot be thought of without the other. And I am trapped into the mind of God, which is the world, because I am a verstandisch being. I think with a dualistic view, and I must overcome this dualistic thinking and be brought back to unity with the whole. And this is, I think, Schelling, which said that der Verstand is a disease of the mind, but that's easier said than fixed, if I might say. He says that those who possess knowledge, they submit all the knowledge that they have to the idea of the whole, or the idea, as Hegel means it, with the IDEA, the unity of subject and object, and they reshape the whole of knowledge and the whole of cognitive process by incorporating this view of things. But that's why the speculative philosophers are not easily intelligible. Then he talks about the movement of consciousness, which consists, as I talked about in previous video, of giving itself its own determinations, its own predicates by, let me take an example. I could say that the purpose, the telos, the concept of Europeans is that they should be pagans, because it is the natural religion and the essential religion of Europeans. But in order for Europeans to become pagan, they have to go through the process of predicating themselves and bringing forth their own identity by going through all the steps which leads to paganism: conservatism, right-wing politics, ancient mythological knowledge, not mythological, ancient spiritual esoteric knowledge, far-right politics, identity politics, being aware of the question of race, of the JQ and all that. They have to go through all these steps and find themselves their pagan identity, because they want to find a spiritual community. And as I said earlier, it was in 2019, that actually the birth of paganism among Europeans is what the Christian called the invisible church. So it turns into its opposite and they become Christian by some sort of dialectical magic trick, but that's complex. But what I want to say is that consciousness has to become itself what it must be. It has to extract its own relation to self by thinking about its being plunged within the substance, and by extracting knowledge and understanding and conceptualization from the substance, which is the world in which we live. Yeah, he talks about what is required in the scientific, as Hegel understands it, which is speculative, that the wealth of knowledge shall spring forth, shall extract itself out of the substance and determines itself. And this is what I made in my own spiritual path. I traveled through through many paths, and I adopted many shapes of consciousness, many figures of consciousness. I've evolved, I've changed, I've been transformed, I've grown up intellectually, spiritually, and yeah. He says that the true system of science must unite the substance and the subject. It's that world spirit, or the one consciousness, must become a subject, must say, I am the consciousness of being, I am God. So it is by uniting all the individual consciousness, being aware of their relationship within the substance, within the world, their interconnectedness, that a subject will emerge, and this will be the mind of God, and it will be the self-consciousness of the whole, and it will be the total systematized system of knowledge. And then he talks about the intellectual intuition. That's contradictory, because in German philosophy, an intuition is that which is determined in time and space, a phenomenon, if you will. And intellectual means that which is grasped by the mind, and an intellectual intuition is a grasping of an immediate cognitive knowledge. And this is what Spinoza calls the third kind of knowledge, which is speculative, mystical insights into the nature of things. And yeah, the living substance sets itself in relation to itself. That's the path of the negative, because the way I see things, the world is my own substance, and I don't remember having done it, but I envision that I am a part of God as an empirical individual who plunged himself into his own substance and who is confronted by an alien world, and I must find myself in this world and recognize this world as being the manifestation of my own mind, and re-establish self-identity with the world, and elevate myself to the level of spirit. That's my purpose. Yeah, he says that the negative sets two sides, subject and object, mind and world, and its purpose is to re-establish its own identity. And that's what happened to me when I had my mystical insights after having had a cognitive and intellectual development. I had the feeling that the distinction between my mind and the world was being abolished, and I re-established my own self-identity. I elevated myself through a cognitive process to a consciousness of being abstractly in unity with the world, and now I must become concrete, and that's what I'm attempting to do with these videos. But yeah, so that's what I could say. I will continue tomorrow with the comments of the preface, and hopefully it can help enlighten our spirit, which is made phenomenal, our being in the world, and our cognition and understanding of our presence in the world. And yeah.